Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Podcast. This is the back of the bus session.
Hello and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. I am buzzing for today. I've got someone on the bus that's inspired me more than he could ever imagine from the XFM days, and I'm really excited to announce Mr. G on the bus.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm all right.
I've loved today. It's been a really nice... I've been to the gym. I've been and kicked my ass at the gym.
Wow.
Got for the Derby station at 3. And
Okay.
we've just had some of the best conversations all the way. So
Yeah, it's been good.
I'm excited to see how this unfolds. But you're here in Ripley today
Yeah.
to come and teach the youths.
Good old Ripley.
The youths.
You've got like 3 buses here.
Yes.
That's quite amazing.
you must be used to buses, mate, being in London.
I'm used to
deep
buses,
London.
but I don't know nobody that's got 3 buses in their backyard.
Yeah.
So that's quite major.
Yeah, it was a bit through a crisis period, really. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I know I love poetry, and then suddenly I kept going to nights and getting talked over. Do you know where you go to a music night? When people are expecting poetry at poetry night, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But you go to like a music night with all your mates, and talking over music's kind of understandable when it works, but talking over talking's nonsense.
Yeah.
So I came home in a bit of a strop one day, and I sort of said to Chrissy, my partner, we need to put a night on the farm. But then we were looking at, like Wendy homes and big buildings.
Right.
And it was a lot of planning permission and money and stuff like that. But we looked on Tiny Spaces. I think it's on Netflix. And there were people living in ships and shipping containers and double deckers. And I was like, right, got to get a bus. And this sounds genuinely like a lie, and it's not.
Yeah.
The next day I went to the gym, and it is a small town. And I asked somebody at the gym to spot me. And I just sort of, I'm quite friendly. I like to talk to people.
Yeah.
And we got onto sort of jobs. And I said, I work in schools and do X, Y, and Z. But I really want to bring the nights to me and sort of have something there. And I said, I'm looking at buses. And he went, fuck off. And I was like, what? And he goes, my best mate down Liverpool sells buses for a living.
Sells buses for a
Sells
living?
buses.
Wow.
I swear, it sounds like a lie, and it's definitely not. So I thought he was taking the mick. I got his number and then called him, and he was like, yeah, meet us tomorrow. So we went down. And then the very next day, we're looking at all these old Glastonbury and Download and buses like that. So
Do these buses actually work?
yes, yeah.
Like
so
key in the engine?
everything goes. This is old London. No, that's an old London bus.
That's old London bus. This is like an American school
old
bus,
American
yeah.
one, yeah.
Right.
I think the idea really, I want to do all these great workshops and get people in like yourself.
Yeah.
Work with the kids in the community, but eventually get picked up with festivals and stuff and start taking it round, and you can build like little stages outside and stuff. That's kind of the vision.
That's a brilliant vision to have.
It's nice to have something on wheels. But today, mate, well, way too much talking about me for 4 minutes. Let's get on to you.
Cool.
How's everything been during, I heard of you through XFM. They were my old school days.
Okay.
That was when I was travelling.
That's quite a while ago.
15 years, do you think?
I think XFM was about maybe 10, 12 years ago. Yeah.
That's what I was saying about you inspiring me, because poetry, I'd never sort of... At school, I got kicked out, in essence.
Right.
And I was just told I was dyslexic, so I left with that badge.
Okay.
Dyslexia, don't do the writing thing.
Yeah.
And I remember living on a farm, putting on podcasts, putting on radio stations, and just seeing, Russell Brand's name pop up, but thinking, oh, he's a daft guy. I need some fun in my life and that.
Yeah.
And then when the conversation was wild, it's all over the place.
All over the place.
But that's no other way to describe it.
Yeah.
But the way that you could articulate it and put it all through this creative meaning at the end, it really struck me.
Oh, wow.
And it was so stunning. But then that died out, didn't it, XFM, after a while? Really, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the show's gone, it went through several, I guess, like transformations, because we started off on 6 Music. Then we moved to Radio 2. Then I think we did a stint on XFM. Then we moved to another platform, Audio Boom. Then we moved back to XFM, which was rebranded Radio X. And I think that probably was the last time. Maybe 2017 was the last time we actually did a show together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was it. My sort of journey after that, I just went and lived life and left that moment there.
Yeah.
And then I lost a friend when I was out in South Africa and got a phone call, and it was a knife crime incident from back home.
Right.
And because I was looking after primates at the time and I just had a pen and paper with me,
Yeah.
I started writing, and it come out as poetry. And I always used to tell the story of, oh, it just fell on the page and this poetry came out. But as I've lived on life and gone in the poetry scene and moved on, I look back at before writing poetry, because that was never an option for me, writing. And there were these figures in time. There was sort of Mike Skinner period for me, the Eminem days.
Yeah.
And then you were in there. I was listening back to an XFM of a long, long time ago. And when you summarised this whole episode, I was like, oh my God, I remember loving this.
Wow.
So I was going back to all the episodes and listening to just the end bit of how the whole podcast would be summarised in a poem.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, mate. You really did. You left a seed and I'd never thought of it.
I think that, like, from doing that show, like, because what Russell and the co-host Matt did was, like, improvised comedy.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to do was improvised poetry. So it's trying to come up with that. It's like a Jerry Springer final thought, but it's so hidden and layered and metaphored to the point where it's unrecognizable, where it only makes sense if you've heard the show.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you listen to it without the show, it's like, okay, some weird journey's occurred. You see what I mean? And I was given pretty much free license to go as far out there as I wanted to. And I remember that I would, like, throw in references from old kung fu movies and, like, you know, early 90s hip-hop tracks and, like, philosophical books that I've been reading at the time. So I would just throw in a whole mishmash of ideas into those poems. And what I tend to find is that the people that gravitated towards those poems were lyric writers. Like, it's quite interesting that the people that that used to go, oh yeah, I like that thing you do, I always say, you write lyrics, don't you? Or you write poems, don't you? Because I know that they understand what I was doing. Whereas other people would just be trying to listen for the thing that they recognize. Oh, that happened in the show and he mentioned it. That happened in the show and he mentioned it. Whereas lyric writers are like, okay, wow, he's actually creating a metaphor here for something else, right? And then they would then talk to you about, when you said that, what were you really thinking? And so I find that, like, it opened up a whole, I suppose, like, career path for me. And it opened up a lot of wonderful conversations that I've had with many people ever since.
Were you poached to do that show then? From how you write, they sort of saw something in you and thought, oh, he could summarise a show.
No, I think originally, because, like, we all knew each other. Me, Russ and Matt, we all knew each other. And so we all used to hang out anyway.
Back in day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when you say back in the day, it's like, oh, gosh, it's a long time ago. It's almost 20 years. And so when he got his show, he just wanted to meet. He wanted to still meet up with us at the end of the show anyway.
Yeah.
So he figured, okay, if I just get my friends on the show, then that kind of makes it a lot easier, because we were all really busy. And then you know how it is where when you're all friends, you've got nothing to do. You all hang out at one place and then you become busy and then you can't hang out anymore. This was a place where, okay, I can get everyone together same time of the week. Bang, we meet together, we do the show, then we hang out afterwards. And so I was promoting a show called Bespoken Word. I had a show called Bespoken Word on Radio 4. So I always had sort of like a radio tradition and poetry anyway. And I think it was around the time of the 2006 World Cup. And so when I went on his show, I think that I written a poem about the World Cup, and then it got a lot of traction, like a lot of people liked it. And then it was like, oh, can you do this again? And then I don't know how it evolved, that I just ended up writing about stuff that was on the show because it was like I can take in information a lot and my brain filters it in a certain way, and it's like I'm trying to take away the fluff and get down to the core of something. Like I can see something and go, okay, I'm writing towards that, and then everything else hangs on that, and then it becomes sort of like almost like a credo for the end of the show.
Mate, and what you were saying then about the friendships, that was something I was fairly never jealous of, but quite envious of, because you could hear it in the studio, the buzz and the excitement, and just you being together. It was just mates, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't put together by some studio executive or get this guy, and a poet. It really wasn't like that. It was very much an extension of us hanging out anyway. So that's why that whole time is like a blur. Like people ask you about certain shows, and it's like I might not be able to remember the show in terms of what was said during the show, because there would have been conversations before the show and conversations after the show. It might have turned into a night out, so it becomes this big, huge sort of thing that occurred. So, yeah, man, it's some of the greatest times of my life. I can't lie.
I think that's why it's so lasting, because you created a community of people, and when you create something so real, it lasts the test of time. Then for me, I remember those moments where I'm laughing to myself in the middle of a field and I felt a part of something. I don't know any of you, but it was like, I'm involved here. We're all having a bit of a play together and a bit of a laugh. Do you know what I mean?
And none of us had any, like, I'd had like formal Radio 4 experience, which was so different, which was so sort of like intro, outro, and now this segment, and now that segment. You know, very, very, it's all scripted, it's all formalized. None of us had really had that kind of free-flowing, just, okay, come in, as long as you don't get sacked, everything's good, right?
Yeah.
That kind of feeling to it. And, it's like a lot of fun.
Because, as a listener, I can really relate to just being with my mates out in town or out on the park, and we're all just saying stupid stuff to one another and making up sayings and making up new words and stuff like that. So, you know, there's so many shows that must have existed through the time, but they just you don't remember them because you don't feel a part of them. But to have that authenticity seep through it, because we all felt a part of it. So it's got a beauty in that.
And also, podcast technology was emerging then.
Yeah.
So people were able to, download the podcast and have it on their then iPods. So what you started to realize that there was a traction that was starting to emerge, whereby like a certain amount of people would have listened to it on the Sunday morning. And then as the week went on, then more and more people are listening to it. Whereas if you think about it, maybe 10 years before that, like say in the 90s, if you missed the show and you weren't there taping it physically, or someone had handed you a tape, then you've missed the show forever.
Yeah.
Whereas this was a case whereby the show started to generate its own life of its own. And even like say what I was doing with the poems, because people could listen to the podcast over and over and over again, they could start to pick out all the different references and all the different metaphors and all the different subtleties that were within the poem, like hidden messages, hidden jokes, all these type of things. They could, from repeated listening, that brought that out. And so I don't think we set out to create something like that, but it was a perfect storm in terms of the technology being available, in terms of us being at the place where we were in our lives at that time, and in terms of just the audience's ears being ready to hear that level of revelry.
Did it feel alien to you though, because you had that Radio 4 experience and everything was in these parameters, and then you're with these wild men and you're like, lads, rein it in?
Not really, because for me it was like, it's a laugh, isn't it? And like you're seeking enjoyment, aren't you?
I would have felt like a naughty boy though. You're in this special, nice built studio, millions of pounds gone into it, and you're all just sort of doing what you want to do. And that's not usually the case, surely.
Well, I think because now I realize that's not usually the case.
Yeah.
But because I was so early on in terms of my experiences, I just thought, okay, because, bear in mind, Six Music, you've got, bands like Kasabian and Arctic Monkeys are walking in, Dizzy Rascals coming in, all that kind of stuff. So you're just thinking, okay, Radio 4 is the more sort of like I don't know, grown up
Yeah.
station. And then this is just like another station where anything crazy happens. So, okay, fine, let it be.
I like that naivety, and people always use naivety as a bit of a negative thing for somebody. But actually being new to it all and being in the time where it's all coming through in its early stages, you don't know how to do it quote unquote properly, or how the gold standard is. So you're just sort of making it up on the spot.
I think that naivety in this sense is not seeing boundaries.
Yes.
So you don't see the boundaries, therefore they don't exist. Therefore you just create your own boundaries. It's not like we were completely anarchic. It's not like there was, you know what I mean? we didn't sort of like, you know, we weren't like throwing, you know, chocolate milkshake at each other while the show was
Close
going
enough,
on.
mate.
You know? But it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I
Being
can't lie.
on podcasts and radio, was that always something that you wanted to do?
Nah, for me the whole thing is like an accident. Like even my foray into like poetry, my foray into radio, it was just, I think most people they enter the arts from a place of disillusionment. Like you're either disillusioned with life, or you're disillusioned with love, or you're disillusioned with the relationships you've got in terms of, I don't know, friends, family, society, whatever. And so you're looking for art to try and find the answers to take you away from that place of disillusionment. So I was just doing a really crap job, like delivering scaffolding, and hated it with an absolute passion. So I found myself sort of like writing little like ditties, like go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Stuff you want to say to your boss, but you can't say to your boss. And then you're you know, I grew up on like hip hop and reggae, so you're trying to write things in a similar vein to the things that you're listening to, and so then it becomes something. But you know, you want to stay true to yourself. So you know, you're not talking about, you know, driving down the streets of South Central. You're pretty much, you know, you're doing little delivery drop-offs in Birmingham or whatever, right? And so then it then sort of like the poems then became things that you just wanted to say. And I realized that once I started writing poetry and once I started performing poetry, it just opened up a whole new world for me. I started meeting artists, I started meeting comedians, I started meeting musicians, I started meeting graffiti artists, I started meeting break dancers, I started meeting people that I never ever come across before in my life. And I realized that what they all had in common was this desire to express something from within. And so you relate to people on that. So even though we're from lots of different genres, you understand, oh, you've got that thing as well.
Oh, that's
you see what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
That's a good feeling.
Yeah. And then so you find your tribe, even though your tribe can't be defined. And so so radio,
passion fuel people.
so radio, it became sort of like a natural avenue for someone who speaks poetry to then enter. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a plan. It's just like you do the thing.
Your voice is your tool.
Yeah, you do the thing, and then doors open, and you just follow the doors that open.
Mate, that's given me a beautiful epiphany moment here. Like, why do I enjoy podcasting so much? But yeah, because I've always navigated to things using my voice as a way of a tool of an in.
Yeah.
Oh, mate. When you were talking about the scaffolding,
Yeah.
how'd you end up there? Because that's quite a masculine sort of job to fire into.
It was just I had to do a lot of agency work. So I've done 8 billion jobs, mate. Like literally, I've done 8 billion jobs.
Really?
Yeah. So it was just like a form of agency work, and I used to always just work, save up, and then travel somewhere, and then come back and then work, save up, and travel somewhere. I just did that for a very long time, and so it was just a case where I was just in a place where it was, I don't know. I don't even know how I ended up doing it. I think a friend of mine was doing it, and he just goes, yeah, come along, we need some drivers. And then I thought, okay, fine, I just join up. And then you start driving. And as you said, it is a very, very masculine world. It's a very, you know, you're dealing with the builders.
Testosterone
Yeah.
fueled.
And so maybe that's why that's why a part of me yearned for something artistic, because you're in that, you're seeing, pictures of naked women on the newspapers, Sun page 3 up in the office, and the calendars. You're having all these endless conversations about, you know what I mean?
I know exactly.
You know
what
exactly.
You mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm nodding away like I'm with you, bro.
And and it's that whole thing of like, that bravado and machismo, one person trying to test another person's, that kind of stuff. Who's the toughest guy? Who can lift the most things onto the back of the lorry? I had a lot of fun doing
was
it.
Was that a part of you in your nature, though? Did you enjoy it while it was happening?
Oh no, I can handle that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really like. I'm not a shrinking violet.
Because
in
some
that
people
respect.
see the creative industry and you're this or that, and I like being both. I feel quite attached to both sides of my nature, of all my footy mates and boxing crowd and the masculine men in my life.
Yeah.
But I love being in them scenes where they are talking of the existential and them playful sides of my nature.
Well, I think you can actually find artistry anywhere. So
That's nice.
So some of the conversations I would have had with some of the other drivers, then we dug deep in terms of like stories of of a philosophical nature. But when you're in a working environment, you need to have a code of ethics, and you need to have a language that you speak in order for you to survive that working environment, right? And so you tend to find that, especially with like when stuff like delivery driving is very transitory. You're not staying in one place too long. I used to be in London, drive up to a place called Wendersbury, right? That's in the Midlands. Then drive up to, what's that place called? Preston, right? And so you've got a language that you speak to the guys in London, a language you speak to the guys in the Midlands, a language you speak to the guys in Preston, and you realise that you need these certain common tools to speak. Football is a great tool to talk about. Boxing is a great tool to talk about. And when you speak that language, people go, oh, okay, he's one of us type thing. And then the philosophical conversations can occur after that. But if you go in there straight with like, I'm feeling this at the moment because I've just been stuck on the M6 and I didn't think I'd ever reach junction 31 because it was a never-ending junction and the road goes to nowhere. Shut the fuck up,
ready
man.
for that.
You know what I mean? Just unload the damn thing, right? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
There's a common connection, a commonality, and like a hook with somebody.
Yeah.
And then it starts opening doors and the layers start peeling off.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so.
And being in that environment, though, because you said you did loads and loads of jobs of quite sort of masculine places, but it was always to get money to go away,
Yeah.
So you had a bit of a drive every time. When you discovered the creative scene, did you still want to go away, or did you sort of feel you had a thing then?
The creative scene kind of kills your travel ambitions because you're stuck. Like, if you're running a night, you got to be there every week.
Yeah.
So you can't go away for 2 months. You can't disappear. So, but I think that I'd gotten a lot of the traveling bug out of me. And so I think that when I started putting on nights, because I used to DJ as well. Awesome. And so I really kind of just transferred the DJing skill and etiquette into the poetry world.
I could tell that. Yeah, I saw you at Chill Pill and a few other nights.
Chill Pill was very much like it was very much run like a DJ night would be run.
Here's my true passion project coming to life.
Yeah, and it's the level of entertainment was always kept high. I always wanted people to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted people's brains to dance with the words the way in which they would have danced with the music. And so it never went into that sort of like some of the other poetry nights where there would be more going to some deep, dark, woe is me places.
Yeah.
And then there was some
Trauma
other
porn.
Exactly. And then there were some other nights that were always being completely self-depreciating, where it's like, oh, this isn't really a poetry night. This isn't really poetry night. Poetry night, and it's like, I'm never gonna insult my art form. I won't do that for anybody. Like, I do spoken word poetry. If you don't like it, well, it ain't for you. But if you do like it, I'm not going to make excuses and try and downplay it as if it's something else. No, for me, it's the most amazing thing in the world.
And that triggered a little thought of mine, and a bit unrelated, but people that don't like it. I saw you post up recently somebody that jumped on the stage.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
with the Chappelle thing and obviously the Will Smith thing. But that art, people getting on the stage with the artist. What happened to you there? What was that about?
I think it was in Portsmouth, and basically, this dude just he just came charging towards the stage, jumped up as you saw, gave me a whack on the back, and I remember saying, "I'm not moving."
A whack?
Yeah. If you watch it again, you'll see it's quite a whack.
Yeah.
Because I remember just thinking, "Okay, I'm not moving now. Now we're just gonna have to just stare at each other," you know, and he was just, his eyes were just glazed, completely glazed. And so, luckily for me, when he looked at the audience, he got a little bit of stage fright, because I think there was about, I don't know, maybe 1,500 people in that audience, right? And that's when he was like, okay.
What have I done?
Rabbit in the headlights. So then he jumped off again. He knocked over a woman and who got injured. And then he went outside. He ended up fighting with some policemen. He ended up getting arrested.
I've got a word for him in Derby.
Yeah. But the thing is that, like, you learn from performing that whenever you step on the stage, you're risking a lot. Yeah, there's a level of vulnerability that is very, very explicit when you're on that stage. That's why people get stage fright. That's why people go through little routines, or they have little lucky charms, or they have little, do you know what I mean? Like mantras or anything, because they know that when they go on that stage, they're at their most vulnerable, and all they've got is their art to protect them. And obviously, my poems weren't going to protect me from that guy jumping up on the stage. So now I now have to employ, okay, I'm going to be calm while you're going to be nervous. And it's quite funny, because when I watch it, it only lasts about, like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But up there, it felt like it lasted forever.
But was it of a nature that he didn't like what you'd said?
I don't know what he was on.
That must be the
I
weirdest.
genuinely don't know what the guy was on. He just came charging towards the stage.
It's quite animalistic nature, isn't it? Sort of everyone's looking forward. You're in the heat of a moment. I could.
Yeah.
You've gone and done it, and then you're like, oh no, I've got to confront that moment now.
Yeah, but I think that, like, when you've done enough shows,
Yeah.
everything's happened. You know, you get booed off.
Have you had that?
I haven't been booed off, but I've been booed. Right?
I like that, because that feels
yeah.
like you just went through it.
Yeah, I did.
I
No. And then, or you make really terrible errors. Like, I did a show at Manchester Apollo, and I don't think I'd ever really been up north that many times, and I didn't realize how strong the football divide was.
Oh.
Exactly. See, right? And one of the guys backstage said to me, "Oh, you know, the thing is that most people in Manchester are City fans. No one's really a United fan, right?" And so obviously he's wound me up. He set me up. So I go out there, and I said, like, "Oh, you know, hi, I'm Mr. G. I'm from London. You know, the thing about London is that you're never more than 6 feet away from a rat. Sorry, let me say this again. The thing about London is that you're never more than 6 feet away from a rat. And the thing about a Man United game is you're never more than 6 feet away from a Londoner." I thought it was a genius line.
That's a piece of art,
I thought it was a genius line.
Like, come to the head.
Yeah, it just came into the head, right?
Okay.
And you could just see the whole crowd.
Oh, no.
Just divide, like, arguing amongst each other.
Oh,
right?
mate.
And I still had like another 20 minutes to
Trying
do.
to bring them back
right?
round.
And I just couldn't. Like, I mean, eventually they settled down. I think after maybe, like, say 2 poems,
They realised it wasn't all going to be like football.
Exactly, yeah, right. They forgave me that faux pas, but I remember just standing there, just feeling I've lost control of this crowd, and I need to find a way to get back.
Have you ever completely forgot lines on stage as well?
Yeah, I mean, the first performance I ever did, I forgot the last 2 lines of the poem. I just couldn't see them in my mind.
How come you didn't start out the journey, or did you, in the hip hop territory? Because you were sort of saying that was what raised you?
I think that I was more comfortable being a DJ.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really, even though people don't believe it, I'm not really that much of a showy person. Like, I'm not a person that's always dying to get on stage. I'm not, like, even if you saw me at Chill Pill, I was usually at the
comfortable.
back. Exactly, just chilling at the back. I just come out there, just do 1 or 2 minutes, and then bang, and then be at the back. So I've never been that kind of guy that's sort of like, you've got to see me, you've got to see me, you've got to see. I don't care to be the front man. I don't care about fame at all, right? Or even, like, I think we were talking before about external validation. It's not really a big thing in my life, right? So I think that to be an MC, to be a singer, to be a performer, you need to have this sort of like inner drive that needs to be heard. And I don't think I had that. Whereas I liked the music. So I liked DJing. So I liked playing music and watching the crowd react. That used to give me the biggest buzz.
I mean, this just may be something of my experiences, and I'm going off of what I've seen as in a vision, but that feels like an anomaly to not be bothered about fame, to not want validation, to not want to be on stages. A lot of the people that I've met, the core of it is to make it, quote unquote, and the making it is being seen by many eyes. And I love that about you. And you don't have to dissect it too far or go into the psychoanalysis of it, but it is quite fascinating for me to... And I wish that was more of a part of me, and it's becoming more as I get older. I become a dad.
Yeah,
it's really starting to settle me a bit, and I'm like, oh, I don't need the validation. Actually,
might be generational. It might be that I didn't grow up with social media.
That's interesting.
So
yeah.
Most of my best performances, nobody filmed them, nobody took pictures. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, nobody had cameras, so it's like you were just there in the moment. And that's it. It's gone. So you enjoy it. I guess you get validated in the moment. I was so used to getting validated in the moment. This other validation of how many likes or views it gets or whatever, it's gone. That thing's gone in the past. Anything that occurs 5 minutes ago may as well occur 5 billion years ago, as far as I'm concerned.
And even being in the sort of limelight when you're with famous friends, and the attention starts becoming on and on, you never felt yourself getting carried away or the ego sort of slipping?
No. It's like take the poems that I wrote on Russell's show. They were written in the moment, in some cases within 10 minutes. And they are 10-minute written poems. They're not amazing, wonderful explorations into the nuances of humanity's dissection of the soul.
Yeah.
They're just...
And I bet you've done them before, and you're like, no, look at this, you idiots.
Yeah, they're just ideas that came into my head at the moment and then just got put down and then just got spoken into a microphone. So if someone says to me, oh my God, you're the most amazing poet I've ever heard. It's like, I'm like, okay, I can't, nah. It's like, because I know what those poems worked for that moment when you heard it live. They only work usually once or twice hearing it. Afterwards, they start to lose their potency because they're not written for that. They're written just to express. It's like if you hurt yourself and you go, ow, the ow serves the purpose of that moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, trying to then say, okay, well, this hour is better than that hour, and this hour, if I put this up on YouTube, this hour is going to be worth.
And try and relive that hour.
Yeah, you can't relive it. You know what I mean? When it comes naturally, it comes naturally. So I think that in terms of like I've got an ego. There's no way you can step on stage without having an ego. There's no way you can explore elements of your thinking without having an ego.
Character.
Exactly, without having an ego that says this needs to be heard. So I've got an ego in that respect, but I don't think I've got like I've performed at the Royal Albert Hall and at a pub with 5 people in the same week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you see what I mean?
Yeah, completely. It humbles you.
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. You realize that that I'm just trying to be a poet.
Yeah.
And trying is the most important part in that sentence, right? I am trying to be a poet. And so every day I'm waking up, I'm trying to be a poet. And where that takes me, whatever adventure that takes me on, let it be. because I remember
Oh mate, I got goosebumps there. I don't know why, that just made me really
I remember
happy.
doing the shitty jobs. So if you want to talk about validation is the fact that I don't have to do those jobs right now. I'm blessed and fortunate enough that my art, my expression, my way of thinking, my way of putting ideas together has allowed me to keep a roof over my head, keep my belly fed, and take care of the family.
And then you were going into rap then, and I was like, don't you dare stop there. And going back into the other side of the nature, because if fame never sort of tickled your interest, really, but when people were seeing you out and about in town, you're in London, people are coming up to you, how do you treat that if it's sort of over-imposing onto you? I imagine you must get that quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that having an alias is good because, like, my name's Greg. Mr. G is a poet. I can very easily draw a line between the two.
That's interesting.
Because you become Mr. G. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Mr. G only exists within the realm of poetry and spoken word
So you
and
can
radio.
put on the Mr. G
jacket.
jacket.
You put on the Mr. G jacket and you become Mr. G. At home, it switches off. You know what I mean? You can't go.
Go on, what switches on? Is it the hip hop, the reggae,
the madness, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's when the madness kicks in.
That's really interesting, man. I've never thought of it like that. And I can feel quite overwhelmed, even if I put a post out or a podcast, and then I go to Knots, and people are coming to you, and you're with your family. It is a bit,
yeah,
and it's of a loving nature, and. Yeah, it can feel invasive, but really they just want to say, oh, I appreciate that thing, or that's really cool. But sometimes I suppose people don't know how to regulate that and say it. I've felt it with people that I've really loved and looked up to. I've gone, and got excited by it, but needed to go and share that moment.
Well, what I realised was that the art that you put out, because obviously there are some people that only know me from doing Russell's show, right? There's some people that only know me from Radio 4. There's some people that only know me from the times when I was doing the comedy clubs. There's some people that only know me from the times that I was in the poetry clubs, right? There's some people that only know me because I've gone into their class and taught them. There's some people that only know me because I've visited their prison when they were inside. So what it is that poetry's allowed me to enter many different worlds and engage with many different people from many different walks of life, and they have all taken something from that experience. And so if somebody comes up to me and goes, oh, I really, really loved what you did on Russell's show, I'm not going to then turn to them and say, oh yeah, well you should come and see this, huge thing that I wrote for this article in this magazine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what it was that they engaged with me on that level, and that thing meant something to them within that moment. And in the same way as that, like, I don't know, like if I met the dude that did Danger Mouse, right? He might have done 20 other billion things, right? But I only want to talk to him about Danger Mouse, you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's that kind of thing, because I'll be like, oh my God, I remember Danger Mouse and Penfold and the Frog and everything, right? So it's like people just, you've been blessed to be able to use your art to reach out to people, and then the world reaches out to you. That's a blessing. And so however they engage with you, be it good or even be it bad, right? Because even if someone doesn't like what you do, in a way, that's a blessing as well, because it means that they've looked at what you've done, contemplated it, and said, you know what? I actually don't like that. I've met people that do not like spoken word poetry at all. And they've sat down, especially when I was doing Radio 4, like we used to like go around the country, and I'd go and like perform at these little Radio 4 type shows. And you meet people that would come up to you and just adamantly tell you that they do not like, spoken word or performance poetry or poetry for the stage. And you'd be like, all right then, well, it's just not for you then, isn't it? You know what I mean? I ain't gonna try and force marshmallows down your throat if you don't like them. Damn, it ain't for you.
I really love the way you think, and you just listed off sort of loads of areas that poetry's taken you, and the prisons to the comedy that I didn't know about, being on radio and schools. Is it horses for courses, or is there a certain area that really resonated with you the most? Was it when you were teaching it or performing it, sharing it?
I don't know. I think that human beings are complex, so you go through many different things. It's a bit like maybe in the morning you might want, eggs and beans,
Yeah.
but in the evening, you might want something different. It's
Yeah.
not that eggs and beans ain't working for you, it's just that it worked in the morning. So I think that the beauty of poetry is that it can seep its way into any industry, because there's a poetry in everything.
Yeah.
And I think the buzz I get is from entering new worlds and being recognized as a poet. And then some people be like, what are you doing here? And they'll be like, okay, you might not know why I'm here at the beginning of the session, but by the end of the session, you'll know why I'm here.
Yeah.
You see what I
Yeah,
mean?
completely.
Because I've been working with data companies recently and tech companies. I recently did it was called Genomics England. They deal with genetic gene sequencing. And I
Wow.
went and gave a speech for them. And
How do you tailor that?
because you just look at what it is that they're trying to do, and everything is driven by a certain passion. Like if you the person that made this table, the person that designed this mic, the person that designed that camera, the person that routed the water that fills this glass, there was a need, and the world got together and tried to supply that need, fulfill that need.
Yeah.
Right? Now, an artist might only be able to look at the most beautiful things and just say, oh, this is beautiful. But there is a beauty in the fact that we can speak into a microphone and it can be recorded. There's a beauty in that. And there are people that are specialists in that. And they will design this microphone with all of their brain power, all of their passion, all of their emotion to try and place the cones in a certain way and be able to get the transmission into the right file sizes that are going to be on your computer that you're going to be playing with. And so those people need poetry too. They need someone to understand that passion. As boring as it might seem, I met a dude that programmed the bus timetables for West Yorkshire, right? And he was so proud of being able to maneuver the traffic and the changes and the one-way systems and the whatever and the blah, 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 blah. And obviously there's people in West Yorkshire that listen to us saying, the buses are fucked, right? But
You've nailed that,
exactly.
Mate, yes.
But what I'm trying to say is that when he was speaking about it, I realized that he was really, really into this thing, right? And so he needed something that would tap into that passion. I may not understand how he programs, the sequencing of the buses and the routes and all that kind of stuff, but I understand the passion in him trying to meet a problem with his brain power. And that's where I believe that poetry can fulfill any
That
need.
Yeah, just passion driven. That is what helped me change my talks on stages when I was with kids.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I was going and doing poetry and I was very nervous and just thought, well, I just like this. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to come and shout stuff at you. And it was great. But then you'd get some kids going, oh, I hate poetry. Poetry's so boring. And then you get some, oh, I love that though. But I just thought, oh, I was going to tell poems. But then as I sort of ventured into it and I could use my story a little bit more, and being a kid that struggled to find any passion, any purpose, any meaning, I lived a very purposeless life and no direction. And then poetry was the thing that, same with you in this story, met graffiti artists and people all over the world, and I was so excited by a thing. And then I honed in on that passion side, and I was getting on stages and just saying, listen, you're not seeing somebody here today going, be a poet, everyone, be a poet.
Yeah.
Just find something that you love and leg it, run with it in every way, and it'll open up so many avenues. And that's kind of what we're doing on the bus today. It's what we're doing, getting in facilitators and people. It's just people that love what they do.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognise that for a while. I was just being a poet. And then I realised I was being somebody that loved something.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you in the sense that, like, that obviously poetry has a bad rap in terms of it's so it's so tied to its literary component, which was drummed into people's heads at school. So
Through a curriculum.
yeah, via curriculum, which is a very, very narrow exponent of the expression that is poetry. And you said that you didn't have a passion. You did have a passion. It's just that there were things that you were passionate about, but maybe you didn't realize you were passionate about them. So I've had workshops where people have told me that they hate poetry, and I was like, why? And then they'll say, oh, it's because da 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 da, and I'll write that down, and I go, okay, what else? And then because da 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 da, and I'll write that down. I say, okay, what else? And da 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 da, and then I'll say, okay, these are very interesting thoughts, and then you put them in a certain order, and I'll say, okay, before we start, why don't you read out your thoughts about why you hate poetry to the class? And obviously, I know well enough that I can put them in an order where they build up to a point of a crescendo.
Really cool.
And so they then deliver a poem about why they hate poetry.
Wow.
Because it feeds off emotion. And so if you have an emotion about something, if you say you're indifferent, I can't work with you. But if you say you hate something, that's an emotion.
There's a feeling there.
I can work with an emotion. The same way, dude says that he loves bus schedules, I can work with that emotion. The same way someone says that they love genetic sequencing and the genome and the history of DNA throughout the ages. That passion, I can work with that passion. So I see it as just being a means by which there's only a limited amount of emotions that people have. Emotions haven't changed. Hate is the same as it was 2 million years ago. Love is the same as it was 2 million years ago. Anger is the same as it was 2 million years ago.
Yeah.
Depression is the same as it was 2. I'm talking about the actual reaction within your body. It's the same thing. The stimuli might be different, but the reaction of how your body feels is the same. So there's always going to be poetry or art that taps into that emotion within different moments.
It's like coming from the same pool, isn't it, though? We're all sort of now, because I feel I have found a thing, it's taken into other things. Like I love videography now, and I love the music scene, and I love trying to work out logic, and I've got this sort of new feeling in me. So when I started doing a podcast, I just wanted to meet them type of people that had found that pool that we're all swimming in together.
Exactly. As I said, I applied a DJ mindset to putting on poetry nights. If I didn't have that love for DJing, I probably wouldn't have ventured or had the confidence to venture into poetry nights. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, completely.
So, but it's just a passion for music, a passion for entertainment, and then all I did was I just changed the components of it.
And the thing with what you were saying there about schools and students, do you find it a little difficult then? Because to be able to run with emotion, I hate or I love, strong emotions, and you can run with that. There is often a indifference I've found, and you can play with it, but what do you love? I don't know. I don't know is quite a common phrase. And then you've got to kind of really build with that. Do you feel...
Well, I usually say, if I say to somebody, what are you thinking about, or what do you like, or what do you love, and they go, I don't know, I'll be like, you do know, you just don't want to tell me.
That's lovely.
Right?
I'm so glad I met you, man.
I can handle that. I can handle you not wanting to tell me, but don't tell me there's something that you don't feel strongly about. Don't tell me that you're emotionless, because then I know you're lying to me.
Oh, mate, you're a perfect person for working with young people. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And then it's like, if you don't want to tell me ever, because when I go into prisons, you've got to be so careful going into prisons to talk to people, because like some of the emotions that you can explore within a regular poetry workshop, you got to realize, if I'm doing a regular workshop, we can explore very deep ideas of, let's say, trauma, family, love, relationships. You can dig really, really deeply in those things. And then afterwards, people go home to their normal lives and they can just, turn on a program, or they can just chat to somebody else, and they can defuse all of that intensity. But when you're in prison, if you chat too intensely and they go back to their cells and they're just bouncing around those ideas within the four walls, it can be very, very dangerous. So sometimes I always say that the number one person you have to protect in this life is yourself. Right? You've got the ideas, you've got the feelings, you've got the need to express certain emotions, but some emotions are not necessarily needed to be expressed at all times. In the same way that a tree has got roots that dig deep, deep, deep in the ground, and you don't see those roots. You expose those roots, the tree dies, right? So the roots need to grow, and they need to grow deep, deep, deep in the ground to give you a rock to anchor yourself with, but you don't tell everything. And the most important poem that you will ever write will be the conversation between your mind and your soul, right? And that might not be for anybody to read.
Wow.
Or to ever be performed, or to ever hit a microphone. I've got poems I would never ever repeat to anybody. They're for me. They ain't for nobody else. They're just for me to work through something.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying to you, that I don't just view this as sort of like a bouncing around or a playing of words or a moment in a spotlight on a stage where you get an applause. It's something that I do in lots of different areas of my life, which have got nothing to do with me being Mr. G.
And when you're writing a poem of that nature for nobody else to see, does it have to have been a thing that's tipped the boat, or can you reflect when you wrote that poem what you were going through at the time? Not the exact experience, but was it of an emotional place? Or
Yeah, it will generally
just
be of
come
an
out?
emotional place, and it will generally be of I mean, you know, look, we're old enough now that there are people who we've had conversations with who aren't here anymore. You know what I mean? You know, they're 6 feet beneath the ground, and you can replay those conversations in your mind. Your imagination's got this wonderful stroke terrible way of reshaping the conversation, so you imagine them saying this to you, the thing you want to say, or you imagine you saying something to them which is the thing that you shouldn't have said. And so you can start playing around these ideas, because realistically you're trying to bring that person back to life. And sometimes you're writing these things and the person starts to come back to life.
Wow.
And it's quite scary. And then you think, okay, maybe I just need to see that person one last time before I can say goodbye to them. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But this poem can't go anywhere
Yeah.
because it served its purpose. You know what I mean? I've actually set fire to it. You know, I put a lighter
Yeah.
to the
Good
paper, set fire to it, because for me to then repeat it on stage and try and get applause for it, or to try and get it published somewhere or whatever, and then have people try and analyze it, or, you know,
It's giving it an injustice.
I can't. Yeah, exactly. It's not serving that purpose for you, but it served that purpose for me.
Mate, yeah, there was a time I remember, again, just on a walk, no music on, no podcast on, nothing. I'm just walking, and it just came. I've got to write this thing, and I started writing it all out, and it took me on a long walk, man. I don't know where I ended up. I wrote it all out, and then my iPhone did some funky business like down the line, and I lost it.
Yeah.
And I was so heartbroken, but actually reflecting to it, I was like, no, it helped me do that purge, and it was lost. That's fine. You had your moment with that, and nobody needs to see it. You don't need to recreate it. It did its thing. So when you said that, then I was like, oh, I remember that moment.
Trust me. I think we've all had that moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's strong, dude. We're gonna nearly have to wrap it up, because we're gonna get you ready for all the utes and everything.
Yeah.
Mate, we've been going for a good hour and a half.
I knew from the moment you picked me up, once we started chatting, I thought, okay, yeah, it's cool.
Mate,
You know what I mean? We're gonna be good.
I've really enjoyed this. You're one of those characters where I'm not overconscious and trying to pick my words to a degree, but you just make me very thoughtful and think about what I'm saying, and I really enjoy being in them presences. Does that make sense? Like in those energies where
you're not curbing too much, man. Because
I'm not in that like overthinky way.
Yeah.
I'm just in this way of I'm not used to this sort of conversation. It's very kind of often flippant and just throwing things at each other in a really nice and playful manner. But to be sat, and I get it every Thursday really, with all the poets that keep coming down.
Yeah.
They make me reflect a lot and feel this comfortability where I'm like, I love what I do. And when I don't have those sort of conversations, I get lost in that a little bit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it's great that you found something that you love what you do, because that will see you in good stead.
Mate, thank you so
Because,
much for today.
You know, look, we've all done things that we don't love doing, and the money's never enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the money's never enough for that bargaining of the soul. It's I think that if you're an artist, you're blessed. You're truly, truly blessed, because you found the thing that you would have done for nothing. You know, I've performed poems and written poems for nothing, and I will carry on doing that for the rest of my days. So I'm just doing an extension of something that I would do anyway.
Yeah.
Right? In between jobs. And the fact that it can sustain you and allow you to do something that you would do anyway, you're just living your life.
And it never sort of took a bit of an ugly nature to you, because obviously when money gets introduced and then you start living off of it,
Yeah.
and then there is a bit of a I need to provide, and the masculine energy comes through, and you think about your family and the exterior. Has it ever warped the vision of poetry for you? Because yes, you love it, but I could take that opportunity where I don't get paid for it and it's beautiful, or...
Yeah, well, you're talking to somebody that has like written for advertising campaigns, just talking to somebody that's written for corporate things. So I'm not exclusive in that. I don't have this sort of like, I've got this purified message that comes to the world. No. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. Like, the fact is that, like, you can't, we live in a world that's dominated by finance, and so you have to be able to sustain yourself. I did not. A lot of the times when you'd heard me on radio, I was still doing my job. It's only when an opportunity came, I got a chance to star in a West End show, and that then gave me enough money to quit my job. But for a long time, I was doing both. I was doing the little delivery job and doing poetry, doing the delivery job and putting on nights, doing the delivery job and doing radio shows, right? So there's a practical component to this. You know what I mean? I'm not living off a hope and a dream here. But what I do realize is that every opportunity that's ever come my way has been as a result of a poem.
Huh.
All right? So I know that when things get really, really bad, I can turn any emotion into a poem. So if I'm feeling depressed, I turn it into a poem. If I'm feeling happy, I turn it into a poem. If I'm feeling jealous, I turn it into a poem. If I'm feeling heartbroken, I turn it into a poem. If I'm feeling inadequate, I turn it into a poem. If I'm feeling on top of the world, I turn it into a poem. Because I know that somewhere along the line, that poem will be able to meet a demand somewhere, and then bang, another set of doors open, and I just go on another adventure.
So do you tend to write every day then?
I used to. I can't lie. I wish I could say. I think that's the one thing that the pandemic started to kill, right? Where I used to write every day. Like I said, I've got notepads all over the place, and I just scribble little ideas. I'm not really a phone tapping kind of guy.
Ooh.
I'm a pen and paper
Controversial.
dude. Yeah, right? But yeah, I kind of got a bit lazy. But again, it's the poems. The art provides me with the opportunities, and that allows me to just carry on.
And have you noticed people on the journey? I feel like you just do you on your journey, and I love that about you.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, because poetry and the creative scene in general, people feel the pool's very small, and getting into schools and getting into places, have you ever noticed a clambering of people thinking, oh, I need this to protect this. This is mine.
Well, I think that
you have advice for those people too.
The politics of art, because it goes through phases. So there's moments where, like when I started, you kind of had to be funny, right? Because what it was there weren't many big poetry nights, so you were sharing stages with comedians, you were sharing stages with musical acts, and so you had to be this thing whereby you were never gonna evoke as much feeling as a musician, and you were never going to be as funny as a comedian, but you had to be somewhere in between. But then poetry started to gain its own legs, and then you had purely poetry nights, and so you then have to sort of like shift and adjust yourself to then say, okay, then fine. There's lots of, like, say, personal experiences. and people are now putting out loads and loads of personal experiences. But the problem is then it's like, okay, I've got to make my trauma more attractive than your trauma, because otherwise I won't be able to get this Arts Council grant, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's going to allow me to do a show about trauma. But for me, it's sort of like, look, man, I don't care about Arts Council. I don't care about supposed funding. I know if I can chat poems to a guy that does bus schedules, do you know what I'm saying, and light that person up, I know that there's always going to be a field for me to work with. Because I'm not trying to bring my backstory to a world and say, accept me as I am. I'm just curious. I'm just like, okay, what is it you do? I'm going to find a poem that works for you.
Wow.
And that's but that's probably the training on the radio show. Because if you think about it, a lot of stuff I wrote on the radio show was me just absorbing what was going on and just trying to find my own little take on it and putting it out there. Whereas there was very little of my own personal story that was in those poems.
And that's like infinite and forever evolving. You could do that forevermore. Because the thing where it's your story and then you go on a stage and utter your story or existence through poetry and that, it can then at some point get to a bit of a crescendo where you think, I've said my piece, I've done my story.
Yeah.
How far does this need to go on? Because I can't really change the past. That is my story. I can tell it in different ways, but it's all going to be of a similar essence. And for you to be able to be an observer and just take in everything around you, that'll be forever.
Well, I'm still DJing, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm still DJing. I'm still mixing and blending. That's what that's
Wow.
all I'm still doing.
Oh, mate,
right?
you're giving me really good feelings. I'm loving this.
So you know, it's not that far outside of myself.
Yeah.
But 'cause again, I really do appreciate the people that do the strong personal narratives and they take you on the journey. But I also understand that there's going to be as you said, they're going to hit a crescendo. And they're then going to struggle in, like, do you then keep on selling this traumatic experience over and over again? Then how do you heal from it?
Package that as well,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you've got to really be on a stage and give it the energy it requires. You kind of have to go back to that emotion, don't you, and really drive that to people. Yeah, it must be exhausting after a while.
No, but some people are born to do those things.
Yeah.
That's what they are put on this earth to do. Whereas I think for myself,
You're the most beautiful, nuanced person. Like, you don't ever speak in too many absolutes. You're like, yeah, but that's of this nature, and oh yeah, and it helps you jump to each side of the fence.
the world's not black and white; it's ever shifting greys.
Oh, I really do think you're one of the most inspiring people. I've enjoyed all of this. Would you ever come back?
Yeah, man.
Can we get you back in Ripley, please?
Yeah, as I said, it's
Well, do you like farms? Are you...
I'm not a big farm fan.
You're not a farm guy?
I'm not a farm guy.
What's up with farms?
Because when I came, it was like, wow, this is a real farm. You know,
I think
right?
I
and you even say hello to the animals, and I was like, wow, we're dealing. This is some country stuff.
I feel
right?
I may remember an episode where you mentioned about farms, and in one of the poems you wrote, and it was a experience you had at a school, and they took you to a farm. And you're like, no, I don't do farms. Do you remember that time at all?
I can't remember.
I remember it in a poem.
I don't think I'd ever say I don't do farms.
Yeah.
But I remember.
What is it about the city life you enjoy? The bustle, the sort of movement.
I like friction.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, I do. I think you see the city has got an unnatural amount of people crammed together in a very limited space, and so what that brings with it is that we're not meant to live in the city. What we do is that the reason why people live in the city is that they're foregoing the fears of the countryside, which is like being subject to the extremes of weather, being subject to a bad harvest, being subject to famine, right? You then live in the city whereby I want a constant food supply, I want constant electricity, and I want constant running water, right? So we've foregone our natural existence of being in the countryside to then cram ourselves into the city, and you've got people from all over the place. You've got people who originated from the mountains, living with people who originated in the valleys. You've got people who originated by the sea, living with people who originated, in the caves, right? And that friction between people creates amazing art.
Yeah.
You know, so just being on the train and that kind of like that, I can't stand these folks. I wish these motherfuckers would go fuck themselves. That's part of city existence. And I hate to say it, that I was born and bred on a diet of that. So when I come to a place that's too peaceful and relaxing, I enjoy it for a little while, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I need some drama now.
No.
Need some drama in this life.
I can take you down the road, mate. I will find some. I promise you that.
And so the reason why you think that I'm chilled is I found a way to manage that level of friction. I've created a world and an existence and a means of survival that manages that friction. And that's what poetry is for me.
That come with age?
Probably so. But I think that I wouldn't write the type of poems that I write, or I wouldn't be the type of poet that I am without the friction. The friction had to exist for me to be the person I am.
To be fair, I didn't like poetry at school because of the experience I had with it.
Yeah.
And then, we're looking at Wordsworth and so on.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean anything to me then. But because now I saw myself not disassociated from a poet, I am a poet, and I was starting to get interested in other poets.
Yeah.
We went to the lakes, and I saw where Wordsworth actually lived. I went to his house, and I started reading up about him.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. And then I couldn't wait to read all these poems that he'd done, because he lived in a lot of friction. He was in a house. It was like a commune, heroin addict, and you just expect him walking in these fields in the abyss, nothing going on. But no, he was a crazy guy.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
Most artists, there's, you're walking that line of sanity.
Who wrote The Shining?
I know there's the Kubrick film in it.
It's a really famous author. I'm just trying to think of his name. But he was on he wrote all the famous horrors. It's a really known name.
Oh, okay, I don't know. I do like horror. Yeah.
I'm gonna find it.
And then slot it in.
And then slug it in. Oh, right. Let me write it. I'll edit this bit in.
So you edit like, who wrote The Shining?
Yeah.
Is it? And then I'll go, yeah, that's him.
Or you just keep chatting away, and we can keep that.
A few minutes later.
Stephen King.
There you go. Yeah. So Stephen King. I'll clip it in. So you said Stephen King. So you sound like the smart one.
Oh, you mean Stephen King?
Yeah. But again, apparently somebody followed him on a routine of his day.
Yeah.
And it was literally wake up, have cocaine, eat some breakfast, go on a walk.
Love it.
Cocaine. By 12 o'clock, go a few steps more, cocaine. And it was always to this point, and Valium had some stuff like this. And then by midnight, that was where he came to write.
Wow.
And that went on for ages. And Stephen King's still alive and now still writing.
Yeah.
But everybody says they can see the difference of... He had to change his whole life around. He was going to die very young.
Definitely, yeah.
And his wife told him, no, you're not doing that anymore. But... And that's not advocating go to the realms of like insanity to be a good writer, but it is a bit of a conversation there, isn't it? It's
I think that I think most artists that I've met, because they've got this burning desire to express themselves artistically within the world, then they're looking at the norms and values of how they were brought up, the restrictions that society places on them, the general, I suppose, relationships that they have and the etiquette within those relationships, and they're questioning everything. And so I think the moment you start questioning, then you start thinking, okay, they told me that this was right, but actually it's a bit fucked up. They told me this would always be, but I can see it having an end. They told me that this could never be done, but a hop, skip, and a jump, and suddenly it's manifested itself. So you start seeing the world outside of its prescripted menu.
yeah.
You start ordering stuff that's not on the menu.
Wow.
And so I think that I don't want to use insanity in the sense that you're losing your mind. I would just say that your mind is expanding
Stepping
beyond
out of the matrix.
Yeah, your mind is expanding beyond the restrictions that were originally imposed upon it. And I think that all artists go through that.
Yes.
Because what we do, think about what we do, it doesn't make any sense.
But it's like of a irrational nature. You know, we've had breakups.
Yeah.
But when I've had that first initial moment, it does feel like insanity. I'll do anything to get them back. I'll scream, I'll punch a wall, I'll beg down the phone. And in that, they can write that mist of sort of irrationality.
Yeah, because you need something that makes sense of that point of crisis.
Yes.
And if you can find the piece of art that can tap into that point of crisis, then it becomes cathartic. But as I said, what we do, it doesn't make any sense. If I spoke to the guys who I used to do delivery driving with and they say, what do you do right now? And I say, oh, I actually sit and I write poems. And from writing poems, I then get invited to go into schools. From writing poems, I get invited to go into corporate meetings and talk. From writing poems, I then get a chance to go onto radio. From writing poems, I then get a chance to work with other people and just bounce ideas around in a room. From working poems, I work with data people. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually make sense because it's like, how the fuck does that work, right? But when you realize that, like, the prescribed world doesn't make sense, and I'm just adding to the nonsense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The prescribed world is nonsense, and I'm adding to the nonsense, so I'm actually in good company.
I think why people enjoy what you do and Stephen King does and all these artists is because they're doing something that the norm wouldn't dare do. But it's in all of us.
Yeah.
Like, we recognise it. I can hear it, and I can watch The Shining. I can watch a crazy horror film and think, oh, I could have imagined that if I dared to go that extra mile, but I've been told not to. I've been felt, no, don't go. You've got to stay in this box. At the time, I don't feel that anymore. But as a young person, I'd try and stay in my parameters, not say them crazy, wild things.
Yeah.
But when you watch an artist do it, it takes you back to that childlike innocence, curiosity of anything's possible. And you go, oh, I recognise that thing. I see it in me. I want to do that.
And, you know, if you think about horror movies, because I do love horror movies,
Same.
right? I do love horror movies. But the most terrifying thing about horror movies is the suggestion of and the removal of hope. That's what's scary. The monster, after a while, you get used to it.
Yeah.
Right? After a while, once you've seen one body be slashed up and you've seen 100 bodies be slashed up, then it's like, okay,
It loses its
it
power.
loses power. But what gives it that intensity where you say this is a good horror movie and this is a bad horror movie is the fact that they tease you with the idea of hope, of safety, and then remove it, and then bring it back again, and then remove it. And so those things, that uncertainty of life, that is what I would say causes so many people in terms of depression, because like you're wanting a certainty of how is your life going to work out. You're wanting a certainty of how are your relationships going to work out. You're wanting a certainty of how is your friendship going to work out. You're wanting a certainty of getting a regular salary. But once you become an artist and you say, you know what, I don't actually care about any of those things, right? I will embrace the uncertainty, because within the uncertainty, hope will come and go the same way it does within a horror movie. You know what I mean, right? The end is the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The end of this journey is the same for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, one day we will be someone who someone else is trying to evoke within a poem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our voices will be like memories for somebody else, good or bad. So we know that it's going to end the same way. So that thing is certain. Death is a certainty. Everything else is uncertain, and just enjoy it.
If you're going to finish a podcast,
There you
that's
go.
got to be a way of doing it, hasn't it?
I think that's about
I
it.
take snippets of podcasts, and that's going to be a snippet.
Is it?
That's absolutely stunning. Dude, could you tell everybody, if they've been inspired by you, where they could sort of see all your stuff and your poems and where you want them to go?
Yeah, if you obviously if you Google Mr. G Poet, you'll find stuff. That's my handle, so it's at Mr. G Poet. That's MrGeePoet. You'll find stuff on SoundCloud, stuff on Twitter, stuff on Insta, and you'll find various stuff on YouTube. But I would honestly say that live is where I work the best. That's my forte. Live, being in the live rooms and engaging with a live audience. That's
I've seen it in action.
Yeah, that's where I work.
It's
at
poetry
my
in
best.
motion, really is. Mate, I've loved this. I'll do my bit. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. You've been a part of the Old Farm Bus, Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. I'm going to leave you on this. I always do, and I always will. Just be nice to one another, you beautiful set of buggers. That's all you got to do. Cheers.